sitting on this side, so amazing. All right, so I hope everybody in the room who's a mother had a good Mother's Day last week. Yeah. I wasn't here. I was with my mom in Anchorage. So this morning we're going to be continuing our journey through 1 Thessalonians. And today we're jumping into chapter 3. Last week, Nick was here and he preached about chapter 2. I don't know what he talked about, but hopefully I don't talk about the same thing, because I don't know if you've read 1 Thessalonians, but the first 3 chapters have a very similar theme. Okay? And so, I don't know if you've noticed as we've been going through, but the first half of 1 Thessalonians is all about encouragement. Paul doesn't have enough good things to say about the Thessalonians. He just keeps on going and going and going about how great they are, how their faith's awesome. You know, just a few examples in the first 2 chapters. We got 1 Thessalonians 1, 3, 6, 8b, 2, 13, 19 through 20. I'm not going to read all these because they're basically all about how Paul's excited about the Thessalonians and what they're doing and how their faith and love is helping them in their relationship with God. And that's not even all of them, but it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop at chapter 2. Paul keeps on going through chapter 3, and that's what we'll be looking at today. So naturally, since Paul was talking about lifting others up, what we're going to be talking about today is lifting others up. Oh my goodness. Wow. I got you on that one. You know, and it's good that we're talking about this today, because this is something that I have been perpetually bad at. You could just ask my wonderful, beautiful wife here. She'll tell you all about it. But let me tell you what I'm really good at. I'm really good at being critical. I'm really good at shutting down your ideas and telling you what you should actually do instead. So if you want that, I'm good at that. People like that are pretty fun to hang out with, aren't they? No, it's not really, right? But that's something that I need to work on. And what I need to really do is learn from Paul in 1 Thessalonians, where he's constantly lifting up the Thessalonians. And he spends more than half of his letter here saying awesome things about them, telling them how great they are. And we'll look at a little bit of it here in chapter 3, pick it up in verse 6. So Paul had just sent Timothy to Thessalonica, and Timothy came back, and it says, "But Timothy has just now come to us from you, and has brought good news about your faith and love. He has told us that you always have pleasant memories of us, and that you long to see us, just as we also long to see you. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in all our distress and persecution, we were encouraged about you because of your faith. For now we really live, since you are standing firm in the Lord. How can we thank God enough for you in return for all the joy we have in the presence of our God because of you?" Well, so Paul is just so nice. He just says all these awesome things about the Thessalonians. He even goes to the point where saying, now I can really live, because I know you're standing firm in the Lord. That's pretty crazy. It's quite the compliment, right? Now, it's cool that what is cool here is that Paul was on to something here. You know, he had figured out something way back then that psychologists today just figured out in the past 100 years. And what he figured out was that positive reinforcement is one of the most powerful behavioral motivators. And they've done thousands of studies on this. Positive reinforcement trumps every other reinforcement method, negative, punishment, what have you. But positive reinforcement is the greatest motivator. And Paul, if you've read any of his other letters in the Bible, he always starts out with praise for the people, telling them how awesome they are, how they're doing great in their walk with God, and then he goes on to what they might need to work on, right? He was always about lifting them up. And he figured out that if he encouraged them in their faith, told them, reinforced their faith, that they would have more faith. If he lifted up their love and how they loved for one another, they would love more, and so on and so forth. At least that was the goal. But Paul wasn't the only one who talked about this in the Bible. The writer of Hebrews also understood that lifting others up and encouraging others was super important. We'll read 2 chapters here, Hebrews chapter 3 and chapter 10. But not the whole chapters, but Just little verses here. Hebrews 3:12 through 13 says, "See to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness." And then Hebrews 10:23 through 25 says, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." Both of these scriptures remind us to encourage one another, remind us to lift one another up. You know, and a lot of us have heard these before, maybe even memorized them, used them as motivation to say something nice to somebody or to write an encouraging letter to someone, right? But the question that I want to ask today is why? You know, why should we be encouraging one another? Some of you just be like, well, duh, you should, just the Bible says so. But I want to get a little bit deeper. Why should we be lifting others up? What should motivate us to do that? You know, I think the answer to this question is in both these scriptures in Hebrews. There's a theme here. And that is the reason why we should be lifting each other up is so that we can help each other be more like God. We should be lifting each other up so that we can help each other be more like God. We need to lift each other up so that we can help each other love, so that we can help each other have faith, help each other stay away from sin and to do good deeds for Him, like these scriptures talk about. You know, this is a really important thing to remember. We've got to lift each other up so that we can be more like Jesus. You know, it's something that we often do, but we got to make sure that we can't encourage other people to feel comfortable in their sin. You know, I think sometimes somebody's just struggling, they're having a bad time, and you just want them to make them feel better, so you're just like, oh man, you're doing great, like, oh, I think what you're doing is awesome, and you just encourage them because you just want them to feel good. But really, you're actually making it worse because you're like, oh, what I'm doing is great. Like, I'll keep on doing what I'm doing, when really, it's not bringing them closer to God. You guys ever done anything like that or heard of someone doing that? You know, it's not right to help people feel comfortable in their sin and in their self-righteousness and their living selfishly. But we often find ourselves doing that. I think what helps me is, and what we got to remember is that we got to be honest. When we're lifting each other up, we got to be honest with each other. You can't just make things up. You can't just do it to make people feel good about themselves. You can't just be like, hey, I like your hair, when they just woke up and their hair's like all over the place. My wife's hair is never like that. It's always beautiful. To me, in my opinion. So I believe that. No, but we got to be honest. We got to have the goal of lifting others up to be like Jesus. Amen. You know what? I'm going to be honest here. It's not always fun and games lifting others up. You know, sometimes lifting someone up is having a tough and honest conversation with them and giving them the courage, aka encouraging. That's what that word means, to give courage. It doesn't mean to make feel good. To encourage them to do what is right. And if you're like me, sometimes it's super hard to find something nice to say to somebody when all you see are all the things that they could do better. You know, it might not make sense, but I'm like, oh man, I see something to fix instead of something that's great a lot of the time. That's not necessarily good, but it can be in some situations. Like when you need to fix something. But it's a good thing that we have examples like Paul here in 1 Thessalonians and the ultimate example in Jesus, amen, that we can follow to lift each other up and to help people be more like Jesus, amen.